This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you, your host this afternoon. We've got a jam-packed show. We have a great guest on with me, but I want to first of all thank all of you very much for giving us all the wonderful kudos on the first couple of shows for the new season. Thank you very, very much to all of you, all my good friends out there. Thank you again for taking the time to watch the show and share it with all your friends. I appreciate that extremely well. And Tommy Schitt, who is my main producer, he also appreciates that. Next week, we have Stephanie Powers joining us before she goes off to Kenya to the William Holden Wildlife Foundation Ranch, however she prefers to call it. It's changed names a couple of times. But we have a great guest on this afternoon, a gentleman who, well, you probably remember from VH1. And you probably remember him also from his own show. But let me tell you a little bit. Before I get to that, he comes on today with his book, Separation of Church and Hate. And we're going to get to where that title came from and everything else. But I want to read some testimonials about this book before I bring this gentleman on. It's called Separation of Church and Hate. Is not just an extraordinary, enjoyable read. It is historical It's historically important. Stephen Van Sant. This one is really cool. This one's really cool. Let's see. John Fugelsang nails this in his book, Separation of Church and State. The Bible says in 1 John 4:8 that God is love, period, end of story. Willie Nelson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about our guest, if you don't already know. John Fugelsang is not only a comedian, he's an author. He's on Sirius XM on channel 127. He's on Monday through Friday as of now from 9 till 12 p.m. Eastern Time. John was also on VH1 and The Daily Show during his time at both of these locations. And he's going to talk about how he got on VH1. It's a funny, funny story. John interviewed the who's who in this business: Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, Tony Bennett, one of my favorite singers of all time, Bruce Springsteen, Ravi Shankar, and of course, Carlos Santana. Would you please welcome a gentleman who I consider a friend, one of the finest gentlemen in the world, the author of Separation of Church and Hate, John Fugelsang.
Thank you so much, Gary. Really appreciate it. Good to see you. Thank you.
It's good to see you too. And I know you're out in Los Angeles, so you're having a good day. Probably the weather is not too unsimilar to where I am here in Florida. I want to read this because I think this is as funny as it gets when we're talking about your book. I've come to view Jesus the way I view Elvis. I love the guy, but some of his fans, Elvis's fans, terrify me.
The fan clubs terrify me,
yeah, terrify you. Yes, yes. Where did that? Where did you get that from? That thought process.
That's just a line from my stand-up act that I used as an epigram to begin this book, to draw a very broad distinction between the actual teachings of Jesus, this brown-skinned Jewish faith healer, and his unauthorized fan clubs, which are seeking to control every level of our country, but they don't actually want to do the stuff that Jesus says. The problem with organized religion is, I'm not against organized religion at all, but the fundamentalist wings, the extreme right wings of all the religions, are the ones making all the problems. And since Rome took over Jesus's operation 1700 years ago, we've witnessed two strains of Christianity: one of totally groovy people who want to follow the teachings of Jesus and take care of the less fortunate,
Right.
and two, this authoritarian strain of religion that uses Jesus but does not follow him. And from the Roman Empire through Columbus, through slavery, through Hitler, through segregation in America, we can look at all these instances where right-wing Christianity did the opposite of Jesus, said they were doing it for Jesus, but never fought for a single teaching of Jesus. And if you want to know what that looks like, watch any of Pete Hegseth's briefings at the Pentagon lately. It's all about we're doing this for Jesus, and we're praying so hard, and we're so Christian, and now let's go kill a bunch of people, and let's rain fire from the skies on people. These guys do not follow Jesus, and when he comes back, he's going to be flipping a lot of tables on these rat bastards.
The Pope put out a statement today, John. I don't know if you were aware, but you've been busy all day long out in LA, that using hate rhetoric and murdering people is not the Christian way. Of course, Hegseth is a Christian national, so he's into Christian nationalism. So I wouldn't expect him to respect the Pope or anything else for that matter.
Yeah. And
What was it
Christian nationalism is always the opposite of everything Jesus talked about. Jesus never
exactly?
said obey Caesar. Jesus was not about fusing government and faith at all. This is because their real religion is power and pretending they're better than other people. That's what they fight
Exactly,
for.
and turning their nose up at everybody, snobs and stuff along those lines. Things that you and I can tell. We've been friends a short time, but you and I are not. Um, why this book? I mean, at this time or any other time, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, as you mentioned, my parents were ex-clergy. I was raised abnormally Catholic. My mom was an ex-nun. My father was a former Franciscan brother. I was taught that Christianity was about the stuff that Jesus talks about: caring for the less fortunate, going to the margins. How you treat the lowest person is how you treat Jesus. In Matthew 25, he gives his marching orders for individuals and nations. In the judgment of nations, the parable of the goats and the sheep, where he says individuals and nations will be judged by how they cared for the poor, cared for the sick, welcomed the stranger, and were kind to people in prison. That's
Yes.
it. Jesus lays it out. He doesn't say how much money you give your church, how devout you are, how loudly you scream at women outside of health clinics, how much you persecute migrants or trans kids. Jesus says it right there. They don't fight for Jesus. They are frauds. And I got pretty tired over the course of my entire lifetime of seeing my mom and dad's religion used to fight for the opposite of everything Christ talks about. And in my lifetime, this really began in the 80s when the issue of criminalizing abortion took over American Christianity and ate American Christianity. And for 45 years, two generations of Americans have been raised where they got the Christians to vote against everything Jesus ever talked about by talking about abortion, which Jesus never talked about. The Bible's not against abortion. Abortions are legal and free in Israel right now because the Bible
Hmm.
and Judaism never banned them. Jesus was against the death penalty more than once, never mentioned abortion, and the average right-wing Christian doesn't know that. And so, it's bad for America and it's bad for Christianity. When people say, "Oh, I hate all Christianity," they usually mean they hate the fundamentalists, the mean ones. They don't mean Martin Luther King or Dorothy Day. They don't mean Bishop Tutu. But when we allow these frauds, these fascists, to set the terms of what faith is, you're grouping Martin Luther King in with the Confederates and the slavers. You're grouping Bishop Tutu in with Hitler. I mean, Christianity is a broad spectrum. And so for me, there's the fake Christians and there's the Christ followers, and the fake Christians need to be called out.
Absolutely, they do. How many years did it take you to put this together with all your research you had to do?
Many,
And
many
I mean,
years.
yeah, about
I mean, I,
five,
pi-
six years.
I pitched it. No, I pitched it for 13 years. The first time I pitched this book was in 2010. And back then, it was a lot more about the Iraq War. And at the time, I had publishers say, "Wait, it's for atheists and believers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's for atheists and believers, anybody who has to deal with a right-wing Christian." And they didn't get it, and they thought it was weird. And so I kept on pitching it and pitching it year after year. At one point, my lit agent came back and said, "Can you write your parents' love story? I'd rather read that." But I'm like, I really had this in me.
Yeah,
And all your listeners, if you have something in you, a book or a script or a short film or something you have to make, a painting you have to do, you have to do it, don't
yeah,
wait.
yeah.
Because after 13 years of rejection, I sold this book on a pitch and it reached the New York Times bestseller list in its first week. And we just won the audio award for nonfiction audiobook of the year for something that was rejected for 13 years straight. So
John Fugelsang is my guest here talking about his book, a separation of church and hate. Was there anything that caught you off guard in your research? I mean, obviously you were raised in a Christian house, the same as, well, actually I was in a Heinz 57. My mother was born Jewish. I was born Jewish, but I'm of Christian faith. I have a brother who I want you to meet one of these days. I want you to meet Greggy. He's a Greek Orthodox priest up in Marlborough, Massachusetts. You'll get a kick out of him. Um, Curses like a I mean, for a priest, he curses every now and then when it comes to sports. But was there anything that caught you off guard that you went, wow, I didn't expect that after you learned this, you read this, you did that? Was there one or two things that you went, I didn't know that. I didn't expect that.
Um, yeah, I think so. I think the chapter I learned the most from, the one that I enjoyed writing the most was a chapter on feminism. I had originally, put the chapter on how the Bible's not against abortion at the top of the book, and then I had at the end I had "Thou shalt not hate feminists,"
Yeah.
because my point of view is if God loves men and women equally, then God is a feminist. I am not a feminist. Feminists are people who just think that women and men are equal. I'm a female supremacist personally. I'm getting pretty sick of waiting for the women to finally take over already. But in writing this one chapter,
Hmm.
boy, did I get a much greater insight into the character of Jesus and what a revolutionary he was when it came to the treatment of women. I knew a lot. I always knew there were like three women apostles, Mary Magdalene and Mary and Martha, the sisters of Lazarus, who went everywhere. But the men who wrote the Bible said, no, no, it's 12 apostles and three groupies. But and I knew that women were property. I knew that women's biology was weaponized against them. I knew that women aren't counted as people in the Bible. But
Right.
to go through so many biblical stories that I learned as a kid, either reading the Bible or hearing in church, that they don't put any context into. What the story of like when Jesus is over with the apostles at Mary and Martha's house, and Martha's angry because she's doing all the cooking and cleaning, and Mary's sitting there at Jesus's feet being taught, and she's all upset, and Jesus finally says, "Hey, Martha, chill out. Mary's made the right choice, okay?" And at the
Yeah.
time, growing up, I thought, "Well, I feel bad for Martha. She's doing all the work. You got all these 12, really? Judas can't kick in like all these guys?" I
Yeah.
didn't know as a kid growing up that it was illegal to teach women. And
Well,
when the
yeah, yeah,
Bible says
yeah,
that Mary was sitting at Jesus's feet, that's where the prize student sat, at the rabbi's feet. So
yeah.
Jesus is breaking the law of his own religion to teach women and telling Martha that education is more important than housework. You can see why churches would keep the real message of that story away from children.
Yeah. Um, we're going to get to that because there is a part of the apocryphers, and you know what I'm referring to. For those of you out there who don't, when they were assembling the Bible together back then, back in the day, there were a lot of books excluded, like Enoch and
Yeah.
others.
Yep.
And I read Enoch. It took me a while with my glaucoma. It takes me a while to read, but at any particular rate, there are a lot of books of the Bible that tell a different story about Mary in particular. That and we're going to get to that well, we'll get to it now. I'm talking about it, so we'll get to it now. But that Mary really was the one with the divine power. She was the one with the 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 outgoingness and talking to the people, and she's the one that went around, and while Jesus performed some of his miracles, she was the power behind the throne, as
You
it
Mary
were.
Mary Magdalene?
Mary
Magdalene?
Magdalene, yes,
Well,
Mary Magdalene.
she was one of the executive producers of his movement. When you read the Bible, it was Susanna and Magdalene who were the donors. I mean, you wonder how these 13 guys without a place to live walked around and managed to eat, and it's because they had backers, and it was women who
Yeah.
subsidized the whole ministry, which is another thing they don't teach you as kids.
No, they don't. And according to the book of Mary and the book of Joshua and others that they found, the whole story of Mary and Jesus and the apostles would be entirely different if they had been included in the Bible. I don't know if you'll agree with that or not, John,
Sure,
but
of course.
the whole story. But here's my question to you, and then we're going to get back.
Because she wasn't a prostitute. Instead, the Pope just made up that there's the famous scene where Jesus is having dinner at a Pharisee's house, and a woman comes in and is weeping at his feet and cleaning his feet with her tears, and Simon the Pharisee's like, well, if he knew what this lady had done, he wouldn't be so nice to her. And Jesus totally calls the guy out, doesn't slut shame her, doesn't care what she's done. And 1,000 years later, a pope decided, oh, that was Mary Magdalene. And so they made it up. And so we're raised thinking that she was a prostitute when she was not. That's
No,
how they
no.
took her power away.
Yeah, they did, and they were very jealous. According to one of the books that I like to watch the History Channel, and I enjoy the books of the Bible that were on for a while, and I do when I could read ravishly read. I would read so much about Jesus. But here is the question: who was Jesus really? Was he the savior of the world? Was he just a really good rabbi? Or was he, as we will discuss later, did he have just really good PR, John?
Um, Jesus was a peaceful, radical, nonviolent revolutionary who hung around with lepers, hookers, and criminals, who never spoke English, was not an American citizen, was anti-capitalism, anti-wealth, anti-death penalty, anti-public prayer, Matthew 6:5, never anti-gay, never mentioned abortion, never said torture's okay sometimes, never fought for tax cuts for the wealthiest Nazarenes, never asked a leper for a copay, never said that the state should force pregnant people to stay pregnant against their will, never said government should force a teenage rape victim to remain pregnant by her attacker against her will, never said we should punish poor pregnant women with greater poverty. And he was a long-haired, brown-skinned, that's in Revelation, brown-skinned, homeless, anti-slut shaming, unarmed, community organizing, Palestinian liberal Jew who embarked on a campaign that some would call a crusade for social justice and was the original innocent brown-skinned man executed by the state.
And my reasoning behind the execution of the state, which we're kind of moving ahead of myself here a little, is that Caiaphas, who was head of the Sanhedrin, they wanted him out of the way. He was making trouble. They wanted to keep the Romans peaceful and calm. And this guy's rolling into town, and he's been causing somewhat trouble, as they would see it, causing this, making a blind man see, performing miracles here, there, and everywhere, like on the Sermon on the Mount. And he's not radicalizing anybody to do anything. He's saying, be peaceful, love one another, care for one another. This is God's way. As John the Baptist said, this man is coming. He is the Messiah. And one of the reasons why I think they never accepted him is because I think they expected this Moses character to come out of heaven, already fully grown, fire and brimstone, defeat the Romans, and suddenly all the Hebrews and Jews of the world were going to be free. And that did not happen. It was a baby that grew up, but Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin wanted him out of the way because they didn't want any more trouble, and their attitude was, well, one more Jew dying as compared to all the rest. What's the big deal?
Well, lot to unpack there, but
Yes.
the
I'm
first thing
sorry, John. I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no, not at all. No, I wrote a book about it. I mean, the first thing I want to say is that the when we talk about the Pharisees, we're not talking about all the Pharisees, right? There's a real tendency to say Pharisees, and that's a shorthand for authoritarian, extreme conservative religious leaders, and not all the Pharisees hated Jesus. And the story Caiaphas does, but Jesus hung out with I mean, I just was mentioning he was having dinner with Simon. I mean, he was friends with Nicodemus. Jesus may have been
Yes.
a Pharisee. And it's important to make that distinction because for 2,000 years we had this lie that the Jews killed Jesus, when in reality the Roman Empire killed Jesus. The Jews, the Jewish leadership, even the most powerful conservative of the Pharisees, were living in military occupation in the Holy Land by the Roman Empire. They
Yes, they
did
were.
not have any power over the Roman Empire. They were given a little bit of power by the empire, but they didn't have any power to make the empire kill anyone the empire didn't want to kill. We have been raised with this since Rome took over Jesus's operation and rewrote it to make the Jews the bad guys in the story of a Jew, and to make the Roman Empire that executed this Jew the good guys. And you'll see this time and time again in Mel Gibson's movie. Oh, they feel so awful about having to torture and scourge and execute this poor fella. Oh,
Hmm.
these Jews we're just the Roman Empire. These few Jews in this desert are forcing us. to torture this poor guy. If only we had some power over this. I mean, Pontius Pilate pretty much gives Jesus a foot massage in that one. The Roman Empire was not gentle. It was a slave society. It ruled much of the world through military dominance.
And they
Any
were
kind of
very cruel, very
Very
cruel.
cruel. After the Spartacus slave revolt, Rome crucified 6,000 captured rebels, and they just lined their bodies along the highway as a warning, right? So Messiah, the anointed one, was thought to be the future king of the Jews in the line of David, and that's the real debate about this. If you go by the Jewish prophecies, Jesus was not the Messiah. But what we have here is when he comes out and he's giving this Sermon on the Mountain saying, bless those who persecute you. A lot of Jews who were waiting for the Messiah to come and kick Rome's ass out of the Holy Land were like, what is this? What did I come to hear? Like, he wasn't popular with everybody. Jesus healed the Roman centurion's slave, who was probably his lover. And, you can see why the apostles were freaked out. But Jesus' whole thing is he resisted Rome, but he didn't hate them. He helped the centurion because he was asked for help, but he resisted Rome in many, many ways. But during Rome's occupation, any kind of Messiah movement was always linked to revolt. Rome had crushed a lot of would-be messiahs, and so by the time Jesus shows up on Palm Sunday and they're worshiping him as a god and then they're praising him, he was seen as a directly political threat. Rome didn't execute people because of their ideology. Rome executed people because they were a threat to the empire. And if their ideology could be a spark that could lead to some kind of revolution, they were dead. And in fact, crucifixion wasn't for religious disagreements. It was for rebels, it was for insurrectionists, it was for
Yep.
enemies of the state to send a message, which is Caesar is the king. This is what happens to rival kings. And that's why over his head, they hung that sign, King of the Jews.
Yes.
Like he, so Jesus was tortured by Roman guards. He was kept in a Roman cell. He was judged by a Roman governor, had to carry his Roman cross to the Roman execution site of Golgotha, where Roman soldiers drove nails into his hands and hung a sign mocking his Judaism over his head. And for 1,700 years, we've been told he was killed by the Jews,
You
by
know,
the same Romans who took over his operation.
yeah, I was when I was in the military, I was in Israel. And while I didn't get to see all the biblical sites, I did get to go to Golgotha, which is I forget the translation, but something of the skull. And it really does. The rocks resemble the head of a skull and everything else. And I have a buddy of mine who he was a college roommate of mine. His name was Zeb Arbach, and he's buried in Israel. He was he was one of my dear friends in the whole world. I'm sorry. When I think of Zev, I really do. He had Papa John's account for so many years. You talked about something that I want to get across to people that they don't realize. Jesus Christ was not the only so-called, and I say that small so-called, Messiah of the day. There were tons of people proclaiming to be the Messiah of the day. So it is almost natural to think that the Hebrews and the Sanhedrin and everybody would go, oh, it's another faker. It's another faker. What difference does it make?
Yeah, but this guy was dangerous to them. This guy gathered crowds. He disrupted the
Yeah.
temple economy. He challenged the religious bosses who were collaborating with the
Hmm.
imperial rule. People were calling him a king. I mean, when Jesus said, the kingdom of God is here, that could have gotten him killed right there alone. Saying the kingdom of
Yes.
God is within you, that could have gotten him killed, right? So that
Yes.
Rome did what empires do. He was executed as a political threat with the
Hmm.
cooperation of the religious leaders who would align themselves with power. And ever since then, for 2,000 years, whenever Christianity aligns itself with power, instead of standing up to it, it always winds up being fake Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're finding around the world. I saw a program last week, one day, on the Christian nationalism. And what a bunch of phonies. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the guys that run that thing, they're male chauvinists. They just want to
Yeah.
control women. They want to
That's all
control
it
the world.
is.
It's a cult. It's
It's
a
not
cult.
even. It's a racket. It's a cult for some. It's a racket for others. And the people who make a big killing off it, again, look at Turning Point USA. Look at any of these frauds. They don't fight for the actual teaching. And you don't need to believe in Jesus as a literal divine anything to use his teachings against these frauds. I wrote my book for atheists as well. I mean, you ask a Donald Trump supporter, give me one actual teaching of Jesus that your movement fights for. And you'll find out pretty quick how little they know this book.
they don't even know about Donald Trump down deep inside. So I mean,
They don't
you're not
care. They're
expect
drunk on power. They're seduced
yeah.
by power. Donald Trump did not get the support of evangelicals by promising to do anything Jesus talked about, right?
Mhm.
Donald
Mhm.
Trump never said, "Oh, I'm going to fight for the teachings of Christ. We'll welcome the stranger. We'll take care of the poor." No, they don't want any of the stuff Jesus taught. They want power. Donald Trump won them, seduced them by saying, "Oh, you've been under siege for so long." Christians are the majority in this population, but my God, the persecution racket. Trump said, "You're under siege. I'm going to put you first." And that, well, that's a seductive message. But coming out and saying we have to take care of the poor and the sick, get that socialist shit out of here. These Christians, they don't want Jesus. They want
Yeah.
Caesar. And they keep picking Caesar over and over again.
As you state in the book, and you have stated, they use it for their own means to do what they want to do, and the hell with everybody else. That's kind of basically it.
That's it.
I want to yeah, I want to talk about this just a few seconds here. Um, some people say that Jesus did not die on the cross, and he was not buried, and he did not rise after 3 days, and that according to some of these books of the Bible that were left out that we discussed earlier, that he lived on and lived a life with Mary and had children, etc., etc., etc. Did you find anything in your research that would back that up or even go in that direction, or did everything you find and the way you and I were both brought up, no,
I
that's
yeah.
not true?
Look, I enjoy the Dan Brown books. I mean, I thought Da Vinci Code was a blast. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. It's interesting to watch, Scorsese's Last Temptation of Christ. It's interesting to
Right.
speculate about these things, but
Yes.
that doesn't impact our life in any way. If Jesus, whether he was real or not, it doesn't matter. This is what I say all the time when I have the same fights with literalists and with atheists. Like, the Bible's got a lot of truth. That's not the same as a lot of facts. So I'm not asking anyone to believe any part of the Bible is a literal fact. What I'm saying is, in this book that we've all agreed on is the Bible, right? This is, you know, even if you use this book and take it literally as literal fact, they're still against Jesus, and it's his teachings that are the dividing line. I mean, the miracles are great, right? Like when you're a
Yes.
kid, the Jesus miracles are the best parts of all the Jesus movies they make you watch. Very
Yeah.
inspiring, awesome, wow, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's great. But that's not going to persuade anybody in this century. 2,000-year-old accounts, third hand of supernatural events. It's not a very persuasive way to sell a religion. But the teachings of Jesus are as threatening to authoritarian power as they were 2,000 years ago. I mean, just something as simple as the meek will inherit the earth. Like, we take that for granted as a cliche, but at the time, that was a big fuck you to the Roman Empire that was standing all around them with shields and swords and horses and armies. The meek shall inherit the earth. The kingdom of God is within you. I mean, saying Matthew 25, individuals and nations have to care for the poor, the sick, welcome the stranger, and care for the prisoner. All this stuff freaks out authoritarians as much as it did 2,000 years ago. So
Yeah.
whether Jesus actually died or was divine or rose from the dead or married Magdalene or committed miracles or never even existed. It doesn't really matter to what we're dealing with right now in this country. This is the book that they're using to gain power, and they're doing the opposite of what this book says. They have to be called out for the fraud.
We're listening to John Fugelsang. He is the author of Separation of Church and Hate. John is also you can catch him on channel 127 on Sirius Satellite Radio Monday through Friday between 9 and 12 p.m. I almost was going to say a.m. I
9
was
to
going to
12.
say,
Well, it is 9 to 12 a.m. on the East Coast. Yeah, we're
yeah,
the prime time programming.
yeah,
We're dinner
absolutely.
time on the West Coast.
But absolutely. I've been on his show. I love him. He's become a fast friend to me, someone that I can really trust. How do you feel when people say to you, "Well, I believe in God, but I don't believe in Jesus because I can't see him, I can't touch him, I can't feel him, and if I can't do any of that, what's there to believe in?" Uh, is that
I'm not here
a
to
lack of faith?
It doesn't matter to me. I don't care what someone's faith is. I don't judge anyone for their faith or their lack of faith. What I'm saying is these people are trying to use a bastardized version of this book to take over every level of our society. They want to control the government. They want to control the military. They want to control education. They want to control the family. They want to control the military using their very, very narrow Jesus-free, anti-Jesus version of this book. That's what Christian nationalism is. Mike Johnson and the whole Seven Mountains Mandate, they seek to control every facet of our lives because they hate the Bill of Rights as much as they hate the actual words of Jesus in the New Testament. And what I'm saying is, whatever your belief system is, we have to battle these people because they're only fighting for their own power. They are not on any divine quest. They don't care about the actual teachings of Jesus. They don't know the actual teachings of Jesus. Their religion is believing that they're better than you and God likes them better, so they get to decide how the rest of the world should be. And the best way to go after them, you can call them names, you can resist them all you want, but the actual teachings of Christ are a great way to show that they are complete theocratic thugs and frauds.
By the way, John, I forgot to say with your book, you can get it on Amazon and you can go to a lot of the bookstores, the major bookstores and smaller bookstores around the country, correct?
Yes, you don't have to buy it on Amazon. You can also find the non-evil website of your choice to buy my book.
Absolutely. You talked about this earlier, and I kind of want to go through this because I get this argument from friends of mine who are conservative politically, and they always say, "Well, Jesus would be conservative if he was alive today." And I said, "Really? Really? With everything that he did, the Sermon on the Mount and all the other miracles that he performed, and he'd be a conservative? If anything, he'd see the blind man and walk away. Say, what good is that going to
I
do
don't
me?"
even think that conservatives are conservative anymore in this country. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of them out there, but I mean, it's moved so far into the right wing right now that, it's hard to find a real conservative in some parts of this country.
Oh,
But
absolutely. I
and
mean,
they want to say Jesus was a conservative, then I and he was conservative in some ways, sure. I mean, he would not have liked Donald Trump. The only sexual sins Jesus ever condemns are adultery and dumping your wife. I mean, he was an observant Jew. He respected the Sabbath. He read the Torah. He was very conservative in many ways, but he was
hmm
a radical revolutionary. And all you got to do is ask your right wing loved one or coworker, give me one teaching of Jesus that the MAGA movement fights for. And you'll see how little they know the book. The number one answer I get is abortion. And I'm like, well, no, the Bible's not against abortion. It never bans it. They're legal and free in Israel. Jesus was against the death penalty, but no. So then they'll say, well, the strong border. And I'm like, no, the only commandment about borders in the Bible are to welcome the stranger. God commands us relentlessly in the Hebrew scriptures to welcome the stranger, to
yes, he
care for
does.
the alien, never mistreat the alien, treat the alien as one of our own. Jesus shows up in Matthew 25 and says individuals and nations will be judged, heaven or hell, by how we welcome the stranger. So why should I listen to you and Donald Trump and reject God and Jesus? And the third most common answer I get, Gary, is he moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. And that's what I've got to be like.
Are
Actually,
you
at no
kidding me?
point in the gospel does Jesus ever mention the United States or where our embassy should be 2,000 years from now. They haven't read the book, and they're counting on you not having read it either. I don't say you can deprogram a zealot, but if you know the scripture, and if you're
Yeah,
debating one of these people, and if you ask questions rather than attack, you won't deprogram them, and it's not your job, but you'll win over their wives, you'll win over their kids, you'll win over everybody else at the cookout or the Thanksgiving dinner by modeling how to be respectful, how to debate properly, knowing your shit when it comes to scripture, turning
right.
the other cheek when they get nasty, because the Democratic Party is not going to do this. The media is not going to call these frauds out. It's going to take the rest of us to show the world that hate is not a Christian value.
No, it is not a Christian value. Um, I had a thought on my mind, and then it just escapes me for a second.
That's most
Um,
of my life.
in 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 his speeches, like on the Sermon on the Mount, which we're going to get to next, or in the next couple minutes, he refers to people a lot of times, the Romans and other people, as hypocrites. It seems to be a word that he really enjoys using to point out people that are opposite of whatever he is or whatever God is. Um, and talk about that, would you please?
I mean, that's the sin that bothers him the most, right? Like
hmm
Jesus never slut shames these women, but he gets furious at the people who do. Jesus said he says, "I didn't come for the good people. I came for the sinners." The sin that consistently pisses Jesus off, I mean, it's two really. One is hypocrisy, and the other is exploiting the poor. That's what drove them crazy in the temple incident. That whole temple freak out was because they were having surge pricing
Yeah.
essentially for the temple currency. You'd come around from all over the Holy Land and you'd trade your ducats for the temple currency to buy animals to sacrifice, like we did with
Yeah.
grandma at the holidays growing up, to sacrifice an animal. And they had surge pricing and it was exploiting the poor. That's why Jesus flipped over all those tables. And when he tells off the Pharisees, it's all about their hypocrisy. It's all about their devotion to these little man-made rules that make them better than other people while not actually being out there and giving of their hearts to the people who need it the most. So that's consistently what pisses him off. Not gay people um getting married.
No.
Not a thing
Uh,
that Jesus cares about.
no, 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 I don't. And it is amazing how you and I, at least in this discussion, we're very much alike. I think you recognize that as well. The way I was brought up, you love one another, care about one another. My father used to have a famous saying about if somebody was down and out, you don't kick them. You treat them with respect. You help them if you can.
Yeah.
My brother Greg is a big believer in that. Now my brother Michael, who spent 14 years in the NFL, he wasn't such an advocate of that on Sundays, but nevertheless, he was a very caring and very nice person. I know the question I forgot. Why do we refer to the United States as God's country? God created not only the earth, but every planet, every part of the universe, an endless amount of galaxies and planets
Yeah.
that stretch out that we will never, ever, ever see the end of the universe because it probably never ends. I mean, why do the people keep insisting that that the founding fathers were all these
You
God-fearing
know
men?
why.
They
You know
weren't.
why. You know why. Because they think they
Yeah.
own God.
Yeah.
They own him. They own Jesus. They own religion. That's why they get so mad when a guy like Tallarico shows up and actually quotes Jesus in opposition to them. They can't stand it because they own Christianity. It's theirs, not yours. That's the racket. So, I mean, it's just a colloquialism, God's country. I mean, if you believe the Bible, the entire world is God's country. If you believe the Bible, actually, I guess you'd say that the Holy Land, this one little speck on a map, look on a globe, and it's this one little tiny circle where all of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam come from. This one little bit. And it
Yeah.
ain't North America either. So
No.
it's a lazy colloquialism. And, it's the name of a good U2 song. But if you
Yeah.
believe in the Bible, then this is all God's country and we're supposed to do his will. And if you believe in Jesus and you call yourself a Christian, using that name is to accept the terms and conditions of Jesus's movement, which is not that you're better than anyone else. His whole movement is about humility. And that's how you can always tell these people are a fraud. Jesus was all about being there for the lowest in society and being humble, not total right wing domination of your local school board.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the misuse of Christianity in today's society is just totally outrageous. I mean, they twist it and turn it and melt it in every way possible to convince themselves, I think, in some cases, John, of what they're doing is right. It's like the one
Yeah.
thing that I've always said, but we're listening, by the way, to John Fugelsang. He's the author of uh, Separation of Church and Hate. Please get the book. I'm serious. I mean, I wasn't able to read all the way through it because of all of you know I have a little problem with glaucoma and it's not getting any better. But I love the book. I read what John sent of it. He sent me the whole book. Um, but please take care of it. But here's another thing too. I think some of the reasons, and I wanted to really talk about this with you. Um, People are walking away from organized religion or walking away from the church or any church, whether it be the Catholic Church, a Baptist church, or whatever, is because nowadays certain people live by certain morality. And if that doesn't fit my morality, then I'm walking away. Oh, I believe in God, but I don't believe in Jesus. Oh, I don't like that. You shall not do this. You shall not do that. Oh, I don't like that. I walk away from churches. The minute I hear a minister talking politics, I walk away from that immediately. That's what I liked about Dr. Charles Stanley. He never talked politics. He was on my radio program with me once, and I said to him, "Why don't you ever talk about politics like a lot of Baptist ministers do?" He said, "Because I recommended a guy once. He turned out to be a crook, and I will never do it again." He said, politicians I've learned are crooks. So he said, I will never do that again. Now, God rest his soul, he's gone. But what do you think, John? Do you think it's
They all
people
talk
trying
about
to fit
politics,
their
Gary. Yeah, they all talk about politics, though. They all do. I
well,
mean
they
I
do,
mean,
yeah.
and the same people who spent the last 45 years pretending the Bible's against abortion are now the ones saying, "Oh, don't bring politics into religion," right? I mean,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same people using the Bible pretending that Jesus shares their homophobia. Don't bring politics into religion. It's always there. It's always political. The
yes,
teachings of Jesus are political, and that's why he was executed by an empire. Again, Jesus says individuals and nations in Matthew 25 have to. You're going to be judged by how you care for the poor, care for the sick, welcome the stranger, are kind to those in prison. So it's inseparable from it. Now, we don't want to impose one religion on the government. The founding fathers got a lot of things wrong, but they got this really right. They knew, they had seen what happened to European democracies that tried to have a state religion, and it always led to violence. It always leads to the opposite of what your religious holy books tell you to do. So they
yeah,
wanted to have a secular democracy where our official religion was all and none. Sit down. It's whatever you want is the official religion or no religion. And that's the only system that can really work, I think. Try to find any society in history that was run by extreme conservative religious, any religion, any nation, any continent, and where they're viewed as the good guys
yeah.
today.
Oh,
So, I
yeah,
mean, I get the argument. But we always we don't want to hear politics and religion until it's politics we agree with, and then we lean in. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
Jesus was totally against the death penalty. Yes, he stopped an execution and said only the sinless can execute. How can I not be political when we have the society where we kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong? I mean, you want to kill people, let's have the debate, but don't pretend you follow Jesus.
right. Where is Christianity going? I mean, we know how it started. We know what it's started. That's the other thing too that I get a kick out of people. They think that Christianity started while Jesus was alive, and
Nope.
that was the
Died a Jew.
footprints of it. He died a Jew. Oh, I got into a big argument with my mother-in-law about that one once. That oh no, he was born a Christian, died a Christian. No, he was born a Jew. He
No,
died a
there
Jew.
were
Nothing happened
no.
until 40 years later. But where is it going? Where do you see it going?
Well, that's the question of our time. Are we going to make the same mistake that Germany made 90 years ago and let
Yeah,
Christianity align with authoritarian power? I mean, we could sit here and talk about the similarities between Donald Trump's agenda and the Hitler agenda all day. He's not
day.
trying to launch a Shoah to exterminate the Jews, but you look at the language they use, all these fascists always do it. They find a powerless minority and they say, "Oh, this is responsible. They're an existential threat. This powerless minority is responsible for all your problems, whether it's Jews, whether it's undocumented immigrants, and only I can keep you safe. Give me power, and I will protect you from this tiny minority that has no power at all." That's scapegoating. It's easy, it's common, and it's how they always do it. And it's happening today. And the question facing us is, are we going to have a Christianity that stands up to Caesar? Or that grovels to that authoritarianism for the sake of earthly power, which is the same mistake the German Christians made 90 years ago. It's the same mistake that the Italian Christians made for fascism. The Spanish Christians chose fascism under Franco. So I don't know where it's going to go. I know that church attendance is getting smaller, but Christian nationalism is getting larger. And those two numbers make perfect sense. People aren't leaving Christianity because they don't like Jesus or God or Noah's Ark or Santa Claus. They're leaving because they don't like the cruelty and the hypocrisy of organized religion. And
Hey,
that's what's doing it.
don't touch my Santa Claus there, John. Don't touch my Santa Claus.
No,
Um,
I'm leaving Santa alone.
I
Santa's fine.
love Santa Claus.
Me too.
Um,
I'm a fan of his work.
yeah, I think there's a close the close relationship there. Do you know what book is on Trump's nightstand, and it has been since he was in military high school?
Well, they've always said Mein Kampf, or no, not Mein Kampf, a collection of Hitler's speeches is on his night
Yes,
table. That's what I always heard.
and
Yeah.
but he has read Mein Kampf so many times.
I don't believe
Um,
that. I'm sorry. I don't believe he's ever read a single book
well,
cover to cover. I don't think he read
yeah,
his
you
own
have a
book, but
point. You
but
have
his
a point.
wife is even his first wife said he had the book of Hitler's speeches.
Yeah, he just there's something.
The
I mean,
parallels
Mary.
are astonishing. The parallels. I posted a Substack on just the parallels between the two, and it's astonishing.
It is Mary Trump, who wrote I guess 2 books on him, said that he has had mentally ill problems stemming from his father since he was a
Sure,
child, and that's
sure,
never going to
and his
change.
mom too.
Yeah, well, his mom was Scottish, and I've heard all kind of rumors as to who she really was and everything, and
She
I'm
was
not.
very sick as a child, and he clearly is a guy who didn't get hugged enough because this guy's insecurity is unlike any of all the micro-penis authoritarian bullies I've ever met. I've never seen anyone with the deep hole in their soul where a personality should be as this guy. I mean, the
Let
constant need for praise, but he
oh,
can't respect anybody who praises him. He's caught in this own loop of his own self-loathing his whole life, and the only thing he cares about is money, pussy, and applause. That's been it his whole
and
life.
and eventually he turns on everybody anyway. I'm surprised he hasn't fired more people in his
Well, but
cabinet.
that's coming. That's why he hired all these nincompoops, right? In the first term, he hired adults who would say, "Mr. President, that's not legal." And he didn't like that. So this time he's hired all these no talents and flunkies and suck-ups, and he's done it for a very good reason, because they won't say no. They won't say that's illegal. And then when the shit hits the fan, he can blame them. I guarantee you. He's going to get rid of Pete Hegseth like he's lancing a boil. As soon as
Oh,
Iran comes back and makes Trump look bad or hurts him. He already began it last week. He officially began last week blaming Hegseth, saying that was all Hegseth's idea. And so he'll get rid of Hegseth. He's going to get rid of Cash Patel, RFK Jr. These idiots, they're all going to get a one-way ticket to Christine Ohm Island, where Dan Bongino and Greg Bobino are already sitting. Again, he hires these flunkies and no talents. And he
yeah,
said that he likes to be around people dumber than him. And then when
yeah.
things get bad, they take the blame for his sins. That's the play.
Unlike other people who like to have people that are smarter than them around, which makes them look better, and everything else goes
Exactly.
well. Let's hit.
He's too
We've
insecure for that.
No, he can't deal. He can't. His ego won't deal with that. Let's talk about probably the most famous speech that Jesus ever gave, and he gave a lot. But let's talk about the Sermon on the Mount, which is quintessential to Christianity in so many directions, besides giving us the Lord's Prayer, performing a miracle, talking about love one another. And I think that's the first time it was in a movie, but it's the first time I ever heard the actor, I forget who it was, use the word hypocrite. And my brother, who corrected me many years ago, said, no, it's in the Bible a lot. But
What's the
uh,
movie?
what was it? King of Kings, I think, with
Okay.
Jeffrey Hunter,
Jeffrey
I think,
yeah, Jeff Hunter, yeah.
Jeff Hunter, who unfortunately died a very tragic. I think it was somebody told me tragic death. Let's talk about the Sermon on the Mount, how much that meant and means to Christians and to people of faith in general.
I mean, I say in the book it's Jesus's Woodstock, it's him giving his life instructions, and it's also him setting the terms of his new covenant. It's his first big gig, and understanding the concept of a new covenant is essential to understanding Jesus, right? He never stopped being Jewish, but he was bringing across a radical reform Judaism. And when he says when they try to defend following Old Testament teachings like Leviticus to be a homophobe, even though that's against Jesus's teaching. Like Jesus said, I didn't come to demolish the law, but to fulfill it. Well, if you believe in a new covenant, then you believe he fulfilled the law. That's why Gentiles get to keep their foreskin and have some bacon, because it's not traditional Judaism. That was St. Paul's whole selling point. It's not traditional Judaism. So in the Sermon on the Mount, he has this thing he says, and it's kind of like the closest he gets to a catchphrase where he says, "You've heard it said before this, but I tell you this." And it's all over. You've heard, you don't hate your enemies. I tell you, don't be angry at someone. That's just as bad. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery. I say, don't look on women with lustful looks. You've already committed adultery in your heart if you're doing that. You've
Yeah,
heard it said, eye for an eye. I say to you, turn the other cheek. Every time he says that, he's taking the old Jewish law that his audience knew and saying,
yeah.
I'm reforming it. It's this now. I'm the guy telling you how it is. This is why the extreme conservative Pharisees were so freaked out and wanted him dead, because he assumes the authority to rewrite scripture and provide a new covenant. And the Sermon on the Mount is so beautiful, and it's all about going to the margins to help
Excuse
the
me.
less fortunate. It's all about humility. It's all about the meek shall inherit the earth. And the Beatitudes are a design for living that are against any empire. And that's why you will always see these right wing Christians fighting to put the Ten Commandments up in schools. because it's order. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, they shalt not, thou shalt not. Donald Trump has broken all 10 commandments. So people who vote for Donald Trump do not believe in the 10 commandments. All right. He's broken all 10. If you're voting for this guy, you don't believe it. You're putting that up there for your kids to see so your kids can realize, oh, my parents want me to see this, and they don't believe it themselves because they vote for the opposite. You'll
Right.
never see these guys fighting to put the Sermon on the Mount or the Beatitudes on a courthouse wall or a classroom wall because all that love, they can't handle it. It's chaos to them. They need order. They need control and dominance. That's their religion,
Yeah.
not Jesus's thing.
No, it really, really wasn't. But I know how important the Sermon on the Mount is and was to Christians all the way around, particularly the end. I believe, isn't that the first time he performs the miracle when the baskets don't have any food in there and they're trying to feed the
I think
hungry?
that was
And
a
so,
different time, actually. That was a different time.
was
But
that a
after
different
that,
one?
after the miracle of the loaves and fishes, the amazing thing there is the crowd tries to make Jesus a king. And Jesus withdraws into the mountains to be alone because he doesn't want to. Just like when he's tempted by Satan in the wilderness and Satan offers to make him the king of the world and he says no. Jesus was no kings before that phrase got trendy.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left in the program. Um,
Thank you for having me. It's good to be back. Thank you so much.
John, anytime you want to come on this program, you are my friend. I feel like we're becoming friends all the time. I enjoy being on with you, and I hope we can do that again. I enjoy good discussion and good conversation. The night that he was arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he used to go often to pray, and he would often go off by himself and pray. It was the quintessential beginning of the end, but the beginning of what we know today. He prayed to have the cup taken from him if there was no other way, then your will be done.
Yeah.
He knew what was coming.
And
He
he didn't want to
knew,
do it.
oh, he didn't want to do it. But is there another way? He asked the Father, and the Father basically said, no, this is it. This
Yeah.
is why you were born. This is
Yeah.
why I came to earth in you
Great
to
moment
do
in
this.
Jesus Christ Superstar, by the way. Great number in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But what what do you want people to take away from that moment and from this book as they move forward in their faith, in their Christianity? Is there more than one message you're sending, you're hoping for? Is there one thing that you want to do? And is there a sequel to this book coming? I hope.
Yeah, well, I don't, I'm not asking people to believe in anything that they don't already believe in. What I did with this book was to point out the actual teachings of Jesus and how his loudest unauthorized fan clubs don't follow his teachings, but they pretend to get power over society. And we can't hate these people back, but we have to beat them. And we have to do it non-violently. And we have to do it with, I think, it helps to use the actual teachings of Jesus on two levels. One, to refute their claims to piety, because they don't follow the guy. It's all a racket. They believe in what they believe in, and they think they're better than you. And maybe because they put up a tree in their house every Christmas and they hate Muslims, but they don't follow the Nazarene. But also because I believe that Jesus' actual teachings, I'm not talking about religion, but the actual teachings of Jesus, caring for the less fortunate. I mean, that individuals and nations have to care for the poor and have to care for the sick. Well, that's just a strong economy. I mean, having a strong safety net so we're not dealing
Yeah.
with mass poverty, the number one cause of bankruptcy in this country 15 years after the Affordable Care Act is still an inability to pay healthcare costs. As much as Obamacare helped, it didn't help enough. Like believing in some of these teachings is actually good for an economy. Not treating immigrants like they're criminals, and being kind to those in prison, the lowest of the low, not discarding them and throwing them in a cage where rape is allowed, but actually having prison education systems, having restorative justice programs where convicts can try to turn their lives around and make amends any way they can without letting them out early, but
Right.
just being human. Because if we're human to the least of these, then we're going to be better people. But if we just
Yes.
worship power and worship letting billionaires be richer, we're not going to get anywhere. So I actually believe that on two levels, the teachings of Jesus can both defeat these ghastly frauds, and I think the teachings of Jesus could save America. And that's not saying I'm selling religion to anybody. but the revolutionary ethic of caring for the least of these is what America needs. We need love. We need nonviolence. Jesus says, pay your damn taxes. He says, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. These
Yeah.
Trumpers don't follow this guy. So
No,
my
no,
next book is
they don't.
coming out. I'm writing it now, and it's all about fake Christians all through history, from the time the Roman Empire killed him and took over his operation, through Christopher Columbus and the doctrine of discovery, through slavery, through segregation, through Hitler, the biggest Christian nationalist of all time, through the moral majority and the Cold War, right up through Donald Trump. It's a book all about the fake Christians in society and how to resist them like Jesus.
I cannot wait for that. We've been talking to the extraordinary gentleman, John Fugelsang, for his book, Separation of Church and Hate. Please get the book. It is important read for you to have this book. It is important for you to understand this book. I am so grateful for you to come on this
Thank you.
program, to take
You're
time
very
out of your
kind.
day. Please stay where you are as I conclude this program. I just want to spend a minute with you afterwards. I want to thank all of you out there very much for taking the time joining us today on Main Street with my guest, John Fugelsang. Please, until next week, which we have Stephanie Powers coming on. That ought to be interesting. Would you please take care of yourselves, take care of each other? God bless you. And please watch out for each other. It's important. Take care.